Hey, Paul, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to have you, man. I want to start off with just finding out more about you and like how did you get into BitCloud?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've been a developer for over a decade. Most of my career, I've been doing Android app development, a whole lot of freelance, been a part of a few startups, done some agency work. I've always been, I've been crypto curious for the past few years. Got into mining and buying crypto back in 2017. Uh, got into Ethereum a little bit and writing some smart contracts. And I think, like a lot of people in the space, I've been thinking about, crypto social network and, decentralized social for a long time. And when I heard about BitClout, I got on as quick as I could, basically.
Love that. Did you hear about it on Twitter or like from a friend or?
I heard about it on a YouTube show. What's it called? Crypto Banter.
Okay.
So yeah, it's about trading cryptocurrencies, and on Fridays they have a whole bunch of different people come on, and they kind of banter about different projects that are happening, and they were all just gushing. This was, I guess, March 19th, I think, is the day that I joined. They were all gushing about it and talking about how great it was. So, it's kind of in my nature to try to claim a username as quickly as possible when I hear people talking about a service. So that was my first thing. Is like, all right, let me see if I can get Paul Burke, because it's pretty hard to get that name generally.
Yeah,
But yeah, once I got on, I was like, oh wow, this is really interesting, and I was I was hooked immediately.
that's amazing. And when was the first like? Did you when she got on? Was that the time you started your first product or like or application, or did you wait for a while? Or how did that happen?
Yeah, so I think right away I started just kind of identifying things that I'd like to see in the interface, and a lot of that was informed by other social networks like Twitter and the other ones that come before. Um, so I just because I couldn't contribute to it, it wasn't open source in the beginning. I figured maybe there's a way that I can start to add these things, and that's where I started building the extension, BitClout Plus, and really that started out as me just wanting to have a sell button on profiles, because in the beginning, in the first few days, I was really more focused on the trading. The community was building, but I didn't really have much of a Twitter presence. I wasn't really a kind of a heavy social network user before BitClout, but I was trading at the time. So my focus was very heavy on that side to begin with. But once I started to see the opportunity for the platform and started to really, like the community that was being built, I saw the opportunity to build the extension.
Love that. And from since then, like I think I read your post about like you kind of like working with the BitCloud team. They've been like kind of taking your suggestions and adding it into the interface. That's kind of cool, man. Like it's like a product is like something which is like new that's happening, and you're like a part of like just the main product, which is so amazing.
Yeah, I mean that's really what attracted me to it, and a similar thing. I was attracted to Android for a similar reason. When Android came out, I was I dropped out of school and moved back to my parents, and didn't really know what I was going to do. I started teaching myself web development, and I was aware of iPhone and what was happening there, but I kind of missed the boat on that one. But when Android came out, and the idea was that any app uh, could kind of take the focus there. Any app could be your phone or your home screen. That was a game changer to me, and I got in on the ground there. But the interesting thing is that I worked on Android for over a decade, and I never actually contributed to the source code. Um, and on BitCloud, it's been 90 days, and I already have two contributions that were merged. So I think that goes to show you the real power of decentralization. On Android, I wasn't that motivated to contribute to a project that was heavily owned by a large corporation.
Yeah,
But here it feels like I'm building not only for myself, but for the community.
love that, man. Cool. And then I want to talk more about BitCloud Plus, but before moving into that, so how has it evolved? So after BitCloud Plus, you started doing Recover Seed. Is that the next project you worked on, or did you do something in between?
So
Or
yeah, Recover Seed was actually kind of something I stumbled upon while kind of looking into BitCloud Identity and the way that the security works. I realized that I was able to inject scripts into the identity frame. And what that basically gave me the ability to do was just read all the data that it had saved locally. Um, And I came to realize that the plain text seed phrase was being saved locally. So really, it was just a few lines of code, and something that I kind of stumbled upon and realized that could be, really useful to the community. I've been in a few clubhouse rooms, things like that, where people have talked about not realizing how important the seed phrase was, or not saving it, but still being logged into their machine. So Recover Seed is basically an extension that you install, and as long as you're still connected in the account that you created your BitClout in the computer you created your BitClout account in, you should be able to actually recover your seed phrase. It's not something I'm going to put on the web store because it's a little bit, it's kind of dangerous for someone to be able to really easily access that and press one click install if they're using your machine. But I think it's important for people to know just how accessible this information is, to be able to recover in situations that they might get themselves into, but also to bring awareness to just the level of access that extensions really have.
So for me as a user, what would I have to do? So actually, let's talk about a use case scenario. So the use case is obviously that I forget my seed phrase, right? And so
Hmm.
shit, there is no centralized party. How do I get back in, right? And how do I
Right.
get my coins? So is it like, can I do it as like after it has happened, or do I have to be proactive to do it?
So we could create a service that would allow basically anybody to reveal their seed phrase. Um, The issue is that I'm not sure the libraries that are required to do this kind of math can run in the extensions. Um, I haven't spent too much time in it just because I'm working on a bunch of different projects. But right now, the way that it works is when you create an account with BitClout Identity, it saves that plain text seed phrase. From my understanding, it doesn't actually save it if you're just logging in for the first time on that identity screen. So if you're using the browser that you actually signed up to BitClout with, and you're still logged in, but you don't know your seed, that's where Recover Seed comes in. So it's kind of a narrow use case, but
Yep.
it's something that I kept hearing over and over, and something that I kind of realized I could put out there in a couple of minutes.
Yep.
But it is entirely possible to recover your seed phrase as long as you are logged in on any browser. But publishing code to do that is a little bit, dangerous. So
Makes sense.
it's the kind of thing where, if you need to recover your seed and you don't kind of fit that criteria of recover seed, it can happen. You can reach out to a developer. They might be able to help you.
Interesting. But what if you're not logged in?
Then it's gone forever.
Then you fuck.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's the interesting part about decentralization, right? Like that's the part which I think when you talk to mainstream media, they're so used, or sorry, mainstream people, they're so used to using like having a third part, like a centralized party where I forgot my password or whatever, and I wonder what would be. I'm just curious in general in crypto or in or like even in BitCloud, I wonder like what will be the like 5 years from now, like what will be that standard where I'm sure there will be a trustworthy company who would store keys or who would store, which would store stuff uh, for exchange of services, right? Of exchange of money. I mean, for right now, the challenge is I'm guessing you can't trust somebody because it's so new. But I wonder when there's like example something like Coinbase, which is like so strong, and if they come with a service at one point that hey, we're gonna store your, like a bank account storing your like as a safety locker, right? You'd be like, yeah,
Hmm.
they're not going anywhere, and that probably might be a thing in the future. I wonder.
Yeah, I think so. I think Gemini offers custodial services like that.
Yep.
That's mostly for people that are storing large amounts of crypto.
Yep.
And it's a cost benefit thing that you have to weigh, right? Like having a centralized place that is similar to a Fort Knox in terms of security. Is that better or worse than having your seed written down on a piece of paper and saved in a safe in your house? I don't know. I mean, some people go to extreme lengths. They etch their seed phrase and break it up into multiple pieces and put it in different parts of the world, and it can only be reconstructed, but if they can contact all the people that have it. BitClout kind of eschews some of that typical seed phrase security. So that's definitely something I think that's going to have to be addressed and reckoned with, and kind of dealt with more proactively over time as people's accounts grow and as we start to see people actually get hacked and things like that. It's just it's a matter of time. But the ease of use that BitClout provides while
Yeah.
running on a blockchain, it's hard to argue against. And there's something to be said for the fact that it's not the first one to try a social network on blockchain. And maybe the relative ease, because obviously it's not as easy as signing up for Twitter, but the relative ease of onboarding might have played a big factor in that.
Makes sense. Um, Talking about BitClout Identity, how secure is it?
Well, I think most, I'm not really a crypto or security specialist. My crypto knowledge is kind of what I need to know in order to be able to build on top. Um, I think most security experts or crypto people would tell you it is not secure at all. The idea of entering your seed phrase digitally into anything is discouraged by a lot of people. Now, this is again, you have to weigh your risks. So, should you necessarily have your entire balance in your BitClout account that you're publicly using? Maybe not. Soon, we're going to have hardware wallets. We'll have ways to create paper keys so that you can send some BitClout and kind of keep it in cold storage and never log in with it. And that's going to be the play, just like it always has been.
Yep.
Um, so, identity, what it does is it just makes it super, super simple to sign transactions. And basically, what that means is anytime you follow someone, anytime you like something, if you buy a coin, they're all transactions in the database. And in order to prove that you created that transaction, you have to sign it. And in Ethereum, we have things like extensions like MetaMask,
MetaMask.
where
Yeah.
when you need to do something, it'll pop up and it'll say sign it. And that's not really the smoothest uh, user experience. If you imagine having to do that every single time you wanted to like a post, it would probably drive people away pretty quickly. So, in a way, identity is a necessary evil. Um, the fact that it stores your seed phrase in plain text, it seems a little bit egregious to me. It doesn't. I'm not sure why it needs to. And anyone that has physical access to your machine basically has access to your account. If they know where to look, they can just open up the dev tools, look into identity, and see your encryption key and your encrypted seed hex. You put those two things together, and you have your seed. So, from a kind of traditional crypto standpoint, it's highly insecure. Now, relatively speaking, most websites can't access this data, right? It's sandbox. So if you go to some nefarious, bitcloutzz.com, they can't just look into this storage. They can't just access it easily. However, extensions that request full access to your data or full access to bitclout.com, they can inject scripts into these things and extract the data. So it's always been the case that you should not use browser extensions that are not open source, especially ones that request full access to your data. Um, so you really just kind of got to do your own research and be really careful there. And, always err on the side of caution.
So, as a for someone who's a newbie user, how do you check if the browser extension is open source or not?
Yeah, so most of the time it will have a direct listing to a GitHub page or something like that in the web store. There's usually a website link as part of the metadata of any extension, and if you click that and it takes you to GitHub, it's most likely open source. Now, frankly, when you're dealing with something like crypto and BitClout, which kind of mends two worlds, I would be extremely careful. Even if you know it's open source, you might want to look to a trusted developer or a friend that can look it over for you, that can audit it, and see what they're doing with this data. Make sure that they're not making any external calls. So BitClout Plus, for example, it only hits bitclout.com. It doesn't hit any other website, no tracking, no external calls. It's not actually possible for me to see anything that you're doing with the extension. And in doing that, I limit the exposure that I'm introducing by using an extension to begin with. So, if you have the technical ability to kind of verify that for yourself, you should absolutely do it. If you don't, but you know someone that can, ask them. And if you are not able to kind of trust in the developer that's putting it out, then use extreme caution.
You made a post about Cloud Feed, something in relation to this. What was that about? Like, how does that tie into this?
Yeah, so that was kind of specifically a response to a post that was saying that using mobile apps is inherently more safe than extensions. Now, the issue is that with BitClout Identity, if you are using it on a mobile app and they are embedding an iframe, or they're embedding this window of BitClout Identity, they have the same type of access that I do as an extension. So it's a bit disingenuous to say that it has a higher level of security. Now, it can easily be argued that a mobile app sandboxing is more secure than storing plain text credentials in in dev tools, and there's no question about that. But to the end user, it's a bit misleading to say blanketly that using mobile apps is more safe, and it's dangerous to kind of put that type of information out there. So, CloudFeed is doing all the right things. They decided to go open source. They're implementing their own hardware signing solution. These are all the right things. This is the way that it should be. Before it was open source, frankly, I wouldn't trust it because you just don't know what they're doing with their data, and they have unprecedented access to your account and ability to act on your behalf. So if you fully trust the team that's putting out a closed sourced software, you can use identity with it, but you're taking a risk, and you should recognize that risk. Personally, I choose open source software not only because I think it benefits the community, but also because I'm able to verify it myself.
Got it. I was chatting with Nigel. He was on the show yesterday or a couple of days ago, and he was chatting about how they're working with the Big Cloud team. They were working with Maybeam
Hmm.
to create a simple to create like for helping with making the mobile sign in or more secure, basically.
Yeah,
And that was and kind of he kind of raised same points as you did, that mobile apps right now are not as secure. It's
yeah.
even yeah, which
And
makes total sense.
the good news is that most modern phones have hardware encryption. So what we can do is start to tap into that. And yes, you will need to enter your seed phrase into your phone, which some people it's a non-starter for. But if that's not a non-starter for you, it will be encrypted on the hardware level, which means that no other app has access to it. And if they do, it's a serious vulnerability that hasn't been discovered yet. So ultimately, that's the way to go. Using BitCloud Identity in mobile right now is a bit hacky, especially if you're building a native app. You have to open up this web window to kind of do these things. It's really not ideal. So having a native signing solution is going to be great, and I hope that they're working together with CloudFeed because I know he implemented his own identity
Got it.
signing.
Cool. Love that. Thanks for sharing that. 'Cause I had no idea. It's good to like kind of know from developers on what's going on in the space, and like what are people building, and then you
Mhm.
kind of start like seeing the patterns, start understanding, especially like even talking with Nigel about it, and even talking to Hunter about it. Like you start understanding, okay, this is an issue, and then it's great to see that like people in the community are working on it and fixing it. It's so amazing.
Yeah, it's one of the
Um,
things I love about an open platform is that you get to see everything happening in real time.
Love that. So what else are you working on? What's your main focus right now?
So right now, I mean, I'm always focused on BitCloud Plus. The developers keep me on my feet. They're constantly breaking things. I've also started to contribute to the core project. So I submitted a pull request for identity and for front end. Um, TypeScript, which is the language that is used for front end, and Angular, which is the framework, are completely new to me. So taking it in baby steps, but ultimately the plan is to try to get most of the features that are in Plus over into the main website. For me, BitCloud Plus was always kind of just a temporary solution, and I think there will be some area for it to exist in the future where it provides things that are kind of not mainstream, maybe more power level user stuff. Um, but most of the stuff in there now, I think, would be widely beneficial to most users. And Carson is doing a big part of kind of getting some of those features over. So a big focus on that, and then also focus on club rooms, which I know you've spoken about a couple of times on here. Um, I'm working on the front end side of club rooms, also integration and some product side. And we're just full steam ahead trying to get that out as soon as possible.
Yeah, I love the team, man. There's some amazing, rock solid people there. I'm really excited about the project, but just
Agreed.
because of collaboration. I think, like, you know what I mean. Like, obviously, all these
Mhm.
tools are gonna get built, but the part that you guys are collaborating, you guys are doing cool stuff, and it'd be awesome to see how this goes.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, part of it was like low hanging fruit, right? We see all these different kind of off chain discussions that are happening in Discord and on Clubhouse and Nacho and, all these different platforms that people are using to continue the conversation. And we saw a real opportunity. Not only is no one really kind of offering the kind of stage and audience mechanic with video, but to have deep BitClout integration, we think takes that to the next level. Being able to tip someone directly in the platform, being able to follow or buy their coin. These are things that I think will add real value to people, creating in that medium, in that space.
I love that. That's so cool. So one of the cool things I think I read your thing you said about the open source software that you can see what's being worked on before it's released. So, and you mentioned a few things, like example, what BitCloud is working on right now. You saw was ability to attach photos and videos to comments and quote reclouds, ability to see interactions on a post, like who liked reclouded and gave diamonds, and ability to block users on the blockchain level. What else are you seeing right now that's been worked on? And one thing I think I saw on because the post today for the viewers right now. We're recording this episode on the day when the exchange has been it's been listed on the exchange. So we saw a post today which said that they're working on an NFT feature.
Mhm.
What else do you think is going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, so they really pushed out a lot of stuff yesterday and the day before. So they kind
Okay.
of cleaned out a lot of the pipeline that I would have had to talk about.
Okay.
But some of the things I think are interesting. A lot of people have been talking about staking coins, and there have actually been skeletons in the blockchain for staking since the beginning, since I joined at least. And the one that is still there is the ability to stake posts. So my assumption is that that's going to somehow have something to do with this NFT marketplace, the ability to kind of sell a post, to transfer ownership of a post. Um, but there might be more
Interesting.
there. There might be more there. Maybe staking a post is about pinning it. And if enough people stake a post, it goes higher into some type of feed. So I think, that's kind of the most interesting thing right now for me is where are we heading with staking? Obviously, where are we heading with NFTs? And it seems like they may be a little bit intertwined to me.
Do you want to? Because I feel like a lot of people who listen to this podcast or will listen in the future are going to be more like not hardcore crypto people, but like more newbies, like mainstream
Mhm,
people. So let's like kind of like let's talk about like what's staking in terms of crypto and what's
mhm.
how is it different in terms of BitCloud.
Sure. Yeah. So typically, staking just means that you are kind of locking up some amount of money. The reason that you might do so is different depending on the platform and the application. So in some cases, you're doing it just to gain some interest, right? They might be lending that money on your behalf, or doing any type of kind of ancillary service that they can mobilize your capital with, and you just got kind of in the background get some residuals. But there are more interesting things happening with staking. So, for example, things like DAOs. So you can stake money so that you have voting rights in a decentralized network. In the context of BitClout, I think the reason people are talking about staking so much is because it's fairly volatile. Pricing things on a bonding curve means that for every sale, the price really moves. And there's certainly an issue with people, rug pulling or kind of uh, kind of misrepresenting their intentions. And what staking would allow is if I can say I'm going to lock up 90% of the supply of my own coin for 4 weeks, my intentions are very clear, right? Like I cannot sell the coin. I couldn't if I wanted to, perhaps. But more importantly, it tells prospective investors exactly what I'm here to do. And some of the discussion that we've seen that I think is really interesting is people are talking about connecting staking to founder reward. So if you were to make it so that when you stake your coin, that's the only time that you can actually earn a founder reward, things get really
Whoa.
interesting, right? And then if you take that even one step further, how about if I stake your coin, maybe I get some of your founder rewards, right? Because there needs to be some incentive to stake. People are not just going to lock up for no reason.
Yep.
And as we know, we're now pretty much capped on supply, so we're not just going to start minting the BitClout. So that seems to be kind of the natural fit, is tying it into the founder reward system. But I think they could really go a lot of different ways with it. But on the most basic level, the idea is I'm publicly locking up this amount of coin for this defined amount of period, and I'm getting some incentive to do so.
And so what you were talking about before was like example again. Not that we're not saying that's going to happen, but example would be if you're staking, let's say, the post or like an NFT, for example. Then the idea is you as if you have found you. How does that work for like someone who is? How does the how do you get like how do you make money out of it, or how do you like make interest out of it? What do you want to call that?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's unclear how that works as far as staking posts, but Diamond Hands this morning mentioned that when you sell an NFT on BitClout, you'll be able to distribute the profits to your coin holders. So
Yep.
to me, that kind of gave a hint like, well, maybe that's really people that are staking, right? Like, so if you stake an NFT and you're promoting it, maybe you can actually gain some of the sale. You can actually get a portion of that. It's just speculation, and there's
Yep.
a lot of ways that you can do it, and that's really kind of the cool thing is like there's a lot of ways that you can work within the confines of what BitClout blockchain has defined for us. Um, but yeah, that would be my guess is that if there is going to be staking in posts, that's probably the way that you can participate in the upside of it.
And you know what? This is very interesting because I've been spending a little bit of time lately learning more about NFTs. I've been investing in some projects, but so far, like it's been very basic in the sense that like the Board Ape Yacht Club or like the Gary V, like that kind of like the project by a creator. It's very interesting to me that like how an Elon Musk sold his first tweet or whatever that was, right? Like it's interesting now that this can if it works that way, anybody, any artist, any creator on a platform can sell their post or their NFT. That's so or anything they create. That's so interesting. It's so easy to do that as well. You can just buy it, and then you like you said, um, like having that option because right now when the it's a lot of friction. When Gary Vee created his NFT, like he had to go through a lot of hoops to set all that up, right? I think it's a
Hmm.
lot of so I can see a future where it's very easy for an artist to do that, right? Like without all that stuff that happened. So this is so interesting and how this is going to evolve and what can happen, what can happen. And like you said, and also we also need something where the coin holders need to just not make money via appreciation, but also by some kind of profits or like dividends or whatever you want to call that. So that
Hmm.
kind of ties in there as well, where that could happen with this thing. If so interesting.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I am big into NFTs. For me, when I learned about CryptoKitties, which is pretty much the first NFT that launched on Ethereum, it opened up my eyes to what blockchain was really capable of. The idea of decentralized trust and decentralized ownership, I think is really going to change the world. And the thing standing in the way right now is the user experience, right? It's extremely difficult to get started. I mean, you have to sign up for an exchange. Most of the time, you have to wait for the KYC process. Then you have
Yep.
to buy the crypto, and then your first purchase it could take a week to clear. Then you have to install an extension and get familiar
Yep.
with creating a wallet on Ethereum. I mean, there are so many steps just to be able to buy something.
Yep.
Whereas if you have someone already on a platform like BitCloud because they're using it for the social value,
Yep.
it's a completely different value proposition. It's so easy. It's right there. So
Yep.
I think it could be big.
Yeah, and the fact that you can just sign up on BitCloud with a credit card for like $400, but still like it just kind of gets you in the ecosystem, and then once you have played with it, and ideally it's so new that my guess is people are the ones who are early enough they will make some kind of money, and that will lead to going and learning more about it because they made a profit and like kind of getting in the ecosystem, and they go tell their friends about it. It becomes a whole yeah, it's interesting. I see how it will
Yeah,
go.
it's really great. One of the reasons I'm really excited about it is one of my favorite things about BitCloud is the artist community. There have been so many amazing artists that have popped up, and some of which have no real presence before BitCloud. And the unfortunate thing is that a lot of them have left the platform.
Yep.
One of my hobbies has been kind of commissioning portraits. So one of the things that's really popular on BitClout is doing kind of artistic style of portraits. So everyone that I can find that's doing that, I try to buy one. And probably half of the portraits that I bought, the accounts were just no longer used. One was rug pulled. One of them just turned out to be kind of a scam. So having more kind of clear incentives and
Mm.
clear alignment with what the rest of the art world is doing, and having that built into BitClout, I think is going to empower these artists in a new way, and really help them to not only be attracted to the platform but to stay.
Yeah, and what you said with the if there is more built-in systems where your reward is locked in, for example, or like your coins are like locked in, then you can trust the artist more, trust the person more that hey, they're not going to run away, and because and it also kind of I think it can become the norm where if it's not logged in, for example, well, I don't know, I want to buy this person because I don't know, what I mean. That could, I think we would at some point we would have that something like that, which gives us that security as a customer that yeah, this is a genuine project because of A, B, and C, right? They have like a
Right.
lock in period 90 days or whatever. Yeah.
And I think it's important to recognize that BitClout is a trading platform, right? There are
Yep.
people that use the platform just to trade. They're on the platform to make money. They're not interested in sharing posts or whatever it is. And we have to recognize that that's going to be there whether we like it or not. So
Yep.
having these defined periods of lockup not only tells you what the intention is when it's locked up, but it tells you what the intention is when it's not. Like, this is an area to trade, and everyone recognizes that.
Yep.
So I think that really could help the situation. I'm hesitant to put any type of regulation in general. So to me, making locking up or staking your coin completely optional,
Yep.
and giving you the ability to actually financially benefit from it, I think is the way to go, rather than
Yep.
requiring some type of disclaimer when selling your own coin, or just plainly restricting it. I don't think that is true to the nature of what BitCloud is about, the vision.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. Before we move on, I want to kind of just out of curiosity, you said you were quite looking into NFTs and stuff like that. Any, not even on BitCloud, but in general, any projects that really speak to you?
Well, I mean, I guess the obvious ones, the big ones like the CryptoKitties, CryptoPunks. Recently, there was one that was, I can't remember the artist's name. I have a good friend who's an artist, and he got involved with it, and it was very interesting. They were selling cubes, um, and you can burn the cubes for ashes, and then I think you can build things with the ashes. So people are doing really interesting things. I think there the explosion there was kind of like, this was just like a matter of time, right? And all the things lined up to make it work. But I think we're really at the infancy of what you can see happen with NFTs. Most people right now are doing kind of visual art, but you can do really interesting stuff because when you are on a blockchain, you have information available to you. You know about the passage of time. You know about the value of things and how things are being traded. And there are some platforms that are starting to hook into that, so you can kind of programmatically make art, or you can use conditions of the blockchain to influence the art. And I think some of those are really cool.
Yeah, I was looking at some generative art, and one I saw was interesting. Was like basically every time it gets sold, uh, the the art becomes less and less like it becomes the quality decreases every time it gets
Mm,
sold, and I was like, "Whoa, that is
hmm.
interesting."
Yeah, that's so
So
great. I love
that's
that. Yeah.
yeah, so cool. Talking about mining, I saw your post. You were like, if you're still mining, you probably want to stop pretty soon because of what happened. And last week we were chatting about this, like the conversation that happened with Hunter. So what was the outcome, or is it still going? What came out of it?
Yeah, so basically, in the middle of the night, Diamond Hands pushed a soft fork and force merged it without any type of review that effectively cut mining rewards by 90%. And I think this was like 15 or 16 days after the announcement that mining was live and a vital part of BitClout.
Hmm.
So, for a lot of reasons, I think this rubbed people the wrong way. Unfortunately, a lot of the focus stayed on mining, which I think wasn't even really the biggest point. For me, the bigger point was just about unilateral moves and working towards decentralization. And there's also something to be said about the fact that, coupled with the deflation bomb, what this move essentially did was lock in the distribution. So, you know, 6 million coins were sold in the pre-sale. 2 million were pre-mined to be distributed to reserved accounts. And, that's 8 million coins of a total of 10.8 million. That's an overwhelming majority. And, you know, to me, my hope was that mining would help to kind of distribute that over time. And one of the things I was looking forward to was voting to increase mining rewards because they were already pretty low. They were 1 BitClout per block, and they're about 1 block every 5 minutes. And generally, that's pretty low, and it was never going to scale to the point where it would attract miners from other platforms. And this was intentional, and this was stated as intentional because they were trying to control the amount of energy that was being used on the BitClout network. But frankly, there was very little energy being used on the network, and there wasn't really much room for it to grow based on the rewards that were there. At some point, it's just cheaper to buy the crypto because the electricity costs money. So, the reasons that we were given seemed a bit disingenuous. Seemed like they were maybe, you know, smoke and mirrors, and I think that's what kind of ruffled feathers. But you know, uh, proof of stake is certainly the way to go. The real question is just like do you have fair and even distribution before you get there? Because proof of stake kind of locks things in, right? Like the rich get richer in proof of stake. But as long as we have kind of an equitable option where anybody can stake, um, it's certainly kind of the more future looking um, solution to consensus. I'm not on the side of those that believe that proof of work is completely terrible and something that needs to be moved away from quickly. I think proof of work is the reason why Bitcoin is so secure. You would have to control the power of multiple nations to be able to effectively hack Bitcoin. And there's something to be said about that. And there's certainly something to be said about proof of work for a brand new blockchain, for something that's starting off. Um, but the value of mining in a mostly centralized blockchain was always fairly questionable to begin with. So it wasn't so much an issue of them kind of cutting off mining. It's something that I think all of us were expecting, and proof of stake was always stated as the ultimate goal. But it was just about the way that it was kind of delivered and the fact that there still has been no announcement about the change to reduce mining fees by 90%. No announcement by the core team, no announcement by any of the pools. And then we find out that the pools got paid off essentially, which is understandable because they almost assuredly spent decent money uh, building the platform, building the infrastructure to run the pools. But I just, don't think kind of the secretive communications and backdoor um, agreements help anything. So I think we're all moving forward from there. I think it was very clear to the core team that that kind of thing was unacceptable, and that we're all kind of in this for the right reasons. So hopefully we won't have to deal with that kind of thing anymore, and we'll start to see more of a push towards decentralization.
And so this might be a little naive question on my part, but so are we not decentralized yet? How can like one person like do a soft fork and make that push?
Yeah, so it depends on which part of BitCloud you're talking about, right? So BitCloud.com, the website, is fully centralized, right? It's
Mm,
open source, but only the core team decides what becomes part of it, right?
okay.
And there's no direct link between the open source code on GitHub and the actual server that's running the code. So they can do whatever they want in between the two.
Okay.
Um, and it's up to them. And this is why things like verification are on a node by node basis, right? Like that's their own thing. Now, the blockchain, BitCloud Core, That is more decentralized, but not
Mm,
really decentralized. So one of the things that is completely centralized about it is block production. So miners, what they do is not only do they validate transactions in a block, but they also produce valid blocks. And when you do that, you can actually rearrange the transactions typically. You can rearrange the transactions in the order that you want, or in the order that they paid a fee to be processed. But in BitClout, that doesn't work, right? Like you cannot rearrange transactions; they have to happen in the chronological order that they did because we're talking about trading here. So one of the things that's completely centralized right now is only the main node produces blocks. All the mining that's happening is just verifying them.
mm,
And this is why the network is resistant to 51% attacks. And it could be argued that, it was never really, there was never really any concern on their behalf as far as cutting mining by 90% because they control what is a valid block. Right.
mm,
So the other level of it is who determines what's actually merged into the source code, right? So when you say a soft fork, basically it's something that all nodes need to adopt in order to continue to run on the same blockchain, in order to continue to validate transactions in the same way. If a node decides not to do that, they are hard forking, right? And you could theoretically create your own cryptocurrency based on BitClout anytime that you wanted to hard fork. Hard fork. Um, right now, only the core team have the ability to actually accept code contributions. So as a contributor, I can send a contribution and say, hey, I want this to be part of the core, but it's up to them to accept it. Uh, so in that way, the code is still partially centralized.
mm-hmm.
However, it's been stated that we're moving
And
towards more
towards it.
decentralization. So one of
Got
the
it.
things that should be coming is called clout improvement proposals, and this is something you see in most crypto projects where there's an entire repository that's devoted to um, just talking about what the next step of the project is. So people can propose ideas or changes. They are fully vetted and kind of specced out before anyone starts working on them. This was all done out in the open in the public. And on some blockchains, people have the ability to vote for these changes. So once we start to move towards that, and more developers from the community start to be given higher privileges, we'll start moving more towards decentralization. And I do think that will happen. And I think there's something to be said about the necessity for having some level of centralization for actually making something like this work. One example of that is we have these super admins, right? And these super admins can swap accounts. So for all the reserved accounts that are on the platform right now, people buy into that coin. And the way that it works, when you want to claim that account, you just sign up for a brand new account, you tweet with your public key, and they basically swap public keys. Right. So this is something that's like unheard of in crypto, right? Like it shouldn't even be possible, really. But this is like kind of a super admin privilege that they have for their reserve profile growth hack. And without that growth hack, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion.
True.
No one would
True.
have paid attention to BitCloud. So
True.
some of it's necessary. I think the important point is that it's very clear that we're moving towards decentralization. It's BitCloud is advertised as fully decentralized when it's not really. And as long as we're moving in that direction, I think that's okay.
Yep.
But when the leader pushes a soft fork at 3 a.m., that heavily affects everything. It starts to question how quickly are we moving towards that goal.
Got it. Interesting. I want to end this. I know I've taken a lot of your time, but I want to end this with the news today, which is the and like the being listed on exchange. So I think you were just saying that you just saw it was listed for 295 starting point at least. But I remember one of your posts you said like whales are dumping. So what happens now? How do you see this playing out? Again, this is obviously not advice, and yeah, just curious where are your thoughts right now?
Yeah, that post was kind of a response to the euphoria that I was hearing a lot around the platform with people that saying that we were going to the moon immediately as soon as
Mm,
it's listed. And just having watched many cryptocurrencies launch, you know, There are a lot of reasons for the price to dump, and some people think that it's just when people want to get rid of their BitClout, but there are market makers out there and people that their intent is to create FUD and get you to sell all of your holdings so that they can buy it at a cheaper
Buy low.
price.
Yeah.
So there are complicated factors at play, and this is once you get into an exchange, you're playing with the big boys, right? Like we're not just a little community trading with each other anymore. We're trading against bots. We're trading against billions of dollars that are mobilized, that are used every day. So don't for a second think that they can come in here and just bring this thing down to zero and then buy the whole thing back up.
Yeah.
Crazier things have happened. And as long as you're willing to hold because you believe in it, it shouldn't really affect you. You can even not pay attention to it. But if you got your finger on the button, just be prepared that things can get dicey quick, really quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. Awesome, man. That was amazing. That was great. Great advice. There's a lot to learn there, and I have learned so much from this episode. You have no idea. So thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on the show, and thank you again.
It's totally my pleasure.